All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. This week, we're going to talk about the differences between TV, film, production music libraries, which is primarily who I have been partnering with in my career and who I recommend most of you guys that follow me to partner with as well, for the primary purpose of building up passive income royalties. These are the kind of companies that get TV placements that can air over and over again so that you can start getting recurring royalties built up. The other side, or another side, there are multiple ways to get into sync licensing, but another sort of sub industry within our business is royalty-free libraries. So these are libraries that don't primarily pitch to clients that are going to be able to put your tracks in a medium that will earn you recurring royalties, but rather, let's say you put up one track on a website, and that one track can be sold to multiple different clients over and over again. So in a way, it's a form of passive income because you continuously get that recurring payment, but you don't really have many options or opportunities to get recurring royalties, where not only does that track get placed on TV, on a TV show here in the US, and you can get multiple payments for that, but that same TV show could then go to Sweden and Germany and Japan and all these different places, and you can be recurring those revenues from multiple places for years and years into the future. So I have just found in my career the TV film world of going for those PRO royalties is where you're going to get the snowballing effect, where you start to see more passive income building up much more powerfully. And obviously it takes a lot of work to get there. But there are certainly a lot of people that make decent and good, and I think a few probably are making full-time income from royalty-free sites. So the question is, what are the differences between those two in terms of our perspective? And I have Trevor and Mike with us this week as well. I want to get their perspective first on the differences. And then we're going to finish up with how are each one of these going to impact each other? And maybe is there a situation where one will maybe just win out the other in terms of how we move forward? Will this be an industry of just royalty-free sites? Will TV film industries or TV film production libraries start to dominate? Or maybe they can just coexist as they have been coexisting now for many, many years now. So let's talk about that. Let's get into the differences. Trevor, why don't we start with you? Why don't you go ahead and give us your definitions and distinctions between what you do with Get It Done Music, your production music library, and what a royalty-free company would be doing?
Yeah, so we're seeing kind of everything kind of blend together in some aspects, because most libraries, and I've known this because my music has been in other libraries, have made royalty-free deals. Like, so a lot of libraries will do, like a perfect example is back in the day, something like, I believe, HGTV or ESPN wouldn't pay royalties, so they'd be doing a royalty-free direct license, which in itself is no different than what, let's say, Audio Jungle would do, where you'd have like that one payment fee, but there's no royalty. So that part of it like exists on on the library side as well, where libraries will make non-royalty situations, even now today, which we've talked about multiple times, which like Netflix, like GID has licensed us on, like, licensed music to Netflix shows with the understanding that there will be no royalties. So essentially I'm doing the same thing, right? The only difference that I see between these two companies is this exclusivity part. And I think down the pretty not too far road, faraway road, the non-exclusive scenario just won't really exist too much, because it's going to essentially be like the bargain bin of music. And we already see those companies not doing too well, because as much as we want to admit, or as we don't want to admit, like, quality is such a big deal. And at the end of the day, people will pay for quality. I mean, how many watch companies are out there and people still spend a big amount of money on like quality watches, cars, like all of this stuff. So there will be markets for, royalty and high upfront things. I think these royalty-free sites will just kind of blend it. Like, the quality will like pull out of them and then go into some of these other companies that will change. Because in the past, there were libraries that were just royalty only. They wouldn't make the non-royalty deals, but that's going to have to change with the birth of the internet and streaming and broadcast and all of this stuff kind of living together. Your phones, video games, all this stuff is going to kind of blend together, where sometimes it's the royalty-free deal, sometimes it's not. And so most of these companies, I think the royalty-free part will just be an aspect of their business, so that all companies, or most companies anyway, will be both royalty and royalty-free. And then really it'll just be a discussion of, well, is exclusivity or non-exclusivity a good deal or a good idea?
Yeah, that makes sense. So you would basically have kind of like a hybrid of both, and it would just be a la carte, whatever would work for their particular project. They could have access to either one of those business models through a
A-
library.
Absolutely. I'm
And
seeing it a lot now anyways.
okay, yeah, and also what you were talking about, the exclusivity issue in terms of those royalty-free sites. I'm actually not really aware, and maybe Mike or Trevor, if you guys can answer that too. Like, are a lot of these sites non-exclusive, the royalty-free ones? Are they just saying like you can just post whatever you want here, and any other non-exclusive ones? Are there ones that are exclusive? Do you guys know what those deals are being offered?
You know what's funny is a lot more royalty-free sites are exclusive than we think. They are mostly non-exclusive. You know, that's what they promote themselves to be, especially for artists and stuff like that. But a lot of them actually, and I found this out recently, being on the other side, working for licenses, acquiring licenses from some of these companies. I found that what a bunch of them are also doing is they either have an in-house like staff of producers that they've bought out, pay them a salary, they own all of their music, or they buy out music from other producers, do like a 50 split on the writing, and then where they actually go and push it out is, their briefs consist of, let's say, trending music on Spotify, and they really hit those algorithms, and then they get millions and millions of streams, and then through mechanical royalties, they get a lot of pay that way, So it's really interesting how they set it up like that, but then it's also available for for anything else too, like content creators and projects and stuff like that, and even TV shows, stuff like that too. So it's kind of like it's really broad. And I think I agree with Trevor. It's just like it is kind of the bargain bin, and what kind of sucks is that they're really, they kind of promote themselves as music libraries, so unless if you're one of us, kind of in the game, you're not really, it's hard to make the distinction. And then all of a sudden the perception to the entire world is that everything that, we do, everything that they do is all stock music is lesser quality, and, and that kind of thing. So in certain ways they bring down the value of what we do, like when, and trying to offer more premiums and stuff like that. And it's hard to make the distinction as well, because they can, some of them, especially if they're doing trending music that's getting a lot of plays, let's say on Spotify, they can say like, oh, ours is premium music too, as a company, they can kind of say that. So it's just kind of tough. But I think one of the biggest differences in the demographic really of clients, so I've seen like, from my perspective, I've seen like, royalty-free sites have tended to focus, or their client base has been more of the individual user, the indie film maker, or the student filmmaker, or the YouTube content creator, that kind of thing, so
Smaller budget stuff.
yeah, small budget stuff, micro licenses, stuff like that, where things that like where a big library, let's say Position, would in the past give the music up for free and just be, oh, you want it for your YouTube channel, just use it, right? But so I think the royalty-free sites, they've kind of carved out that micro licensing market, and it's funny because you see the big libraries now going after trying to monetize that market too, especially now with like, there being a lot more content creators out there. So, which does pose a really interesting question for the future of all of it, really.
Right. And will the TV film market then go chase, these sort of stock library sites, right? To go like, hey, we're going to start saving a lot of money if that quality starts improving to the point where like a TV show could use some music from a royalty-free site.
Yep.
Two things that popped up I do want to make sure that I mention. Number one, the reason why I personally haven't gone with the royalty-free business model, first of all, is because of that, not getting the royalties, of course. Like that's just one of the big things that I knew, seeing that like, if I want to have a long-term career in this business, I need royalties. So I need to be partnering with people that can at least try to get me royalties. And not that royalty-free sites can't get you royalties. That's also a misunderstanding. People think it's impossible. Your tracks could get placed into a medium like a TV show that could earn you royalties, and your songs show up on a cue sheet that gets sent to a PRO, but it's not their primary focus for their clients. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that. But I obviously don't like the idea, and I made a video about this on my YouTube channel about like a quick tip to just determine whether or not a library is probably going to be a good partner for you. How easy is it to become distributed by them? And if it's as easy as clicking on a couple of buttons, uploading your tracks, there's no quality control, you put in your metadata, you pay your little fee for their website hosting, and you're now in the sync licensing business, You're really not. Okay. You are on a website and you could possibly get discovered by somebody out there, but nobody usually at these royalty-free sites even know you exist, know anything about you. They've never been on a phone call with you. They probably never had an email with you. So nobody's really your advocate. Nobody's really out there pitching your music going like, no, this is my guy or my girl and I want to help them out. And I think they got some great music and I want to help them get their first placement, right? There's no relationship there. So there are ways to, sort of hack the algorithm essentially to understand, okay, what tracks are getting purchased the most on a particular royalty-free site. Let me see if I can kind of, reverse engineer that and go into that. And that's a strategy. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. But in terms of trying to get somebody personally to like really push your music for clients and for people, those sites really don't work that way. They're basically meant to be just a complete hands-off. If you're a client, go ahead and look through our catalog, find whatever you want, download it and use it, right? Purchase your license, is that it? If you're an artist or a producer, upload your music, pay your little fee, and we'll take our cut or whatever it's going to be, and that's it. So there's not a lot of personal relationships going on there. So that was obviously one of the biggest reasons for myself. I want to work with somebody that knows my name, has my phone in their phone, has my email address. They know a little bit about me. I know a little bit about them. Like we actually care about each other, even in a small business way, but there's still an emotional thing going on because I like people that are like, they got my back, and that they really are fighting for me and I want to fight for them as well. So relationships are so important in this business for success. And I just think that the TV film licensing libraries are the way to get those kind of relationships built. Secondly, this question came up in Sync Academy the other day saying, I see all these really, really big artists like with a lot of followers going to like royalty-free sites and putting a bunch of music, or great composers, a lot of talent going to these sites. Like, what am I missing out on? Like, why are they doing this? Maybe I should be doing it because it seems like the whole crowd is going over here. I want to make sure you guys are aware that I have talked, this is coming from personal experience. This isn't a theory. I have talked to people that have toured the world with Grammy-winning artists, people who have actually won Grammys as well. People have reached out to me from my YouTube channel and everything I've done, and they have no idea what's going on in the sync licensing business. They are clueless about it. I actually had, it was so really cool. A couple weeks ago, somebody went to cameo.com and had my favorite drummer for my favorite band send me a cameo. And in this note that my friend gave to the drummer, they said, my friend, he does sync licensing. He's been following your music forever. And this cameo, this guy he's toured the world. They've won a Grammy. They've been in a band. This is the drummer for Seven Dust, by the way. They've been touring and being in a band for 20, 25 years, something like that. In his cameo to me, he's saying, you know what, maybe we need to talk. Like, I need to get my tracks in TV shows. How do you do that? This is a guy that's 50 something years old, been in the industry this long, no clue. No idea what's going on. So just because you see people jumping into a certain platform or going this direction, going in that direction, don't compare yourself to them. You don't know what knowledge they have. You don't know what information they have. It's possible that you probably have a lot more. I can almost guarantee you, actually, if you follow us with what we do here, you probably know a lot more than the average person, especially in just a general music industry, about what's going on in sync licensing. So don't just follow the crowd of wherever the crowd is going. They could be falling off a cliff. You want to just follow them because they're moving in a direction. So always be true to yourself. Focus on what your goals are and what's really important to you. So I just want to make sure that was out there. But Trevor, do you have some thoughts on that?
It's funny you bring up that story because there's I won't say who, but I was a part of finding out and discovering that probably one of the biggest rock stars of the last decade or whatever had never signed up for BMI or ASCAP, and they lost out on basically a decade of music of royalties for their stuff being in
ouch
movies, and because nobody told him. His manager never told him. Nobody told this dude.
Maybe they never knew. I don't know.
And they never knew, and they had no idea. And it was literally at a bar talking to somebody from the TV and film world. And then them being like, well, what do you mean? And then going down that rabbit hole and realizing that you missed out on a lot of money that nobody got. It just stayed. Nobody ended up
worst
getting
day of his life, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, he's a multi. It is a bad day, but not life-changing bad day for him.
Not a bad day. Not like a bad day for us.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm sure it was rough though, just to hear. But anyway. So, all right. So where was the conversation going? Because I had that story and now
just about how, not going wherever the crowd's going just because you see other artists going to certain websites that you don't need to follow the crowd.
Yeah. Man. So I heard somebody explain gut feeling to me the other day, or not explain it to me. I heard somebody talk about it, and it essentially gut feeling or intuition or whatever is your brain accessing RAM at a faster pace than you can actually think. And so then you get the gut feeling, right? And it's something like your subconscious runs at 1,000 times faster than your main conscious or whatever, right? And so that I have noticed in my personal experience and people that I've talked to, where they'll do the like, man, I wish I would have done that thing I was like considering and I wanted to do, but Skrillex said this one thing and now I went that direction, or whatever. So I really do think that there is some sort of like, just blindly follow that intuition, because I think you understand not only yourself, but your past experiences and the current situation you're in much better than some celebrity that, or celebrity or whoever it is you're looking up to. Like, they have their own reasons. That probably doesn't mean that those reasons work for you as well and are a good idea. And I think like thinking about like in a scenario where you've got like a website, if that, like, think of it this way: if you were looking at a website and there was not the celebrity that you were looking at and it was just some random website, I think a lot of people would be like, I don't know. But because there's this celebrity kind of telling them, hey, you look up to me, you like my records, I do this thing. Like, it works in a marketing standpoint because so many people fall for it. But I do think that as like on a personal level, if you remove that hype part and you just think about it, it may not actually be a good idea for you. So like, I haven't heard much of what you're talking about, probably because I just haven't been paying attention to that kind of stuff. But I could easily see a scenario. And I mean, I have in the past when I was younger, I remember doing that kind of stuff. Like, well, so-and-so said they did this, so I should do that. Or so-and-so bought this plugin, so I should probably do that. And like, listen to yourself more than anything. And I guess is kind of the moral of that, because like I said, most people, and you guys it's probably true for you guys as well, there have been just so many scenarios where it's like, I wish I would have just listened to myself here, because my answer was better than this like path I went down for a year. So I don't know. That's my thought on that.
Yeah, and it's scary to do that, man. Like, when the whole crowd and the whole world is going in a different direction, and you're the only one going like, I don't know if that's the right direction for me. It's really scary to like go and pave your own path and to go like, yeah, that might work for them, but I'm not them. So it is a courageous thing to try to do. And I love that analogy of that. I want to like dive into that further, maybe on another episode about it does feel like that like maybe your subconscious is like just reaching out in some weird way to your conscience to say, be careful, this is not going to be good for us. But you can't really understand what that is. You just get this kind of weird feeling of like, something doesn't feel, I think we've all had that feeling when you're about to do a business deal, you're considering doing something new, and you just get this like twisting feeling in your stomach or even in your heart, and it's just something doesn't feel right. I think that's a great way to maybe explain it, that there's something deep down within you that's telling you in its only way that knows how to, which is just to like cause a little bit of pain for yourself, basically, like get your attention physically somehow, because you're right, maybe your conscious brain cannot process that speed of what your subconscious is trying to do. So that's really cool, man.
Yeah, there's not enough time. I'm sorry. There's not enough time for your brain to tell you what it is. Like, this is like primitive stuff. It's like there's not enough time for you to go through all of the stuff to come to the conclusion, but your brain already did in a way.
Oh.
And so your brain is kind of doing it, and they're going, okay, like the only thing I can do is make him feel uncomfortable, and that way maybe he won't do the thing that I don't want him to do. But I can't tell it all to him at normal speed, or else he's going to run out of time and then get eaten by the lion or whatever.
Oh, okay. Just it's like a survival, base of the brain, fight or flight sort of a thing. Yeah, to keep you safe.
In a way, yeah, in an easy way to explain it. It's just something like that. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Absolutely. How about you, Mike?
Well, first off, I want to go back to that Seven Dust story. I find that really interesting because I know their manager was really plugged into the whole like TV sync world.
Their current manager?
I mean, well, no, like back in the day,
okay.
I guess when they were, so yeah, I don't know about their current manager. I don't know who that is or if it's even the same person, but yeah, no, I just found that interesting. I was like, huh. But anyway, yeah,
totally caught me off guard too, because I'm seeing this thing and I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, I did send him an Instagram message. I still haven't gotten any response back, but I wasn't really expecting one. But it was so cool just to like go like, wow, I know something that you don't, and like you're my idol. You're the one that I looked up to. Like, you're the reason why I really wanted to get into drumming. It's crazy.
But yeah, so like my take on the whole thing is just like, as an outside observer, you don't really know what anybody's story is, right? So you might see all these names. So one thing that I do know, like with, the biggest thing, especially when you have a brand and you're an artist, and you have a big following, stuff like that. So one of the things that you start to hold on to more and more is your own rights and your own shares, like publishing. and stuff like that. So I know that that's a big consideration. So if you're a big composer, it's the royalty-free sites that are going to offer you the most opportunity to keep your publishing. So that's one reason why they would probably go there. Plus, the non-exclusivity is probably more appealing to them. On top of that, though, I guarantee most composers, and most of them, like big, even A-list composers, and I know this for a fact too, because so most of them have music in big exclusive libraries too. So they just have their music everywhere, and and I think that obviously the strategy, whether for them or their team, is just kind of like, well, let's try to put our music in every avenue, like every penny, every nickel that comes in is revenue, right? So, and they have the name to be able to put their music in a royalty-free library and not have it sit, So if somebody goes in and this is for like big producers too. I think even like, not Timbaland like himself, but like, people on that level even go to that, even do that too. So, and if they know what they're doing, a lot of times I don't know. I've always seen that kind of like, it's kind of like when iTunes started, the beginnings of that, and you're looking at music distribution in that way. So you had these like, you had the distributors like InGrooves and stuff like that were forming relationships with iTunes, and direct personal relationships, and they would work out their featured artists and stuff like that was front and center on iTunes, and through personal relationships. So that to me is kind of like what like the exclusive libraries are kind of like. And then you have like CD Baby, TuneCore get in the game, and then they just flood iTunes with music, and that's kind of like what the royalty sites are, so, and it's or royalty free sites are. So I feel like whenever you look into these, like I don't know what's some of them, like Audio Jungle, like what Song Trader, I guess, Music Beds, like all of those kind of Artlist, I guess, is another one. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, if you see a big composer on there, chances are they are going to have like, and chances are that that's probably their C or D level stuff, and their A, B level stuff is going to be in, BMG, Extreme, like, position, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So.
And I do want to say that too, that like, I think the place for, if you're wanting to follow in our footsteps and get into TV film licensing, royalty free sites could have a place in your career, but I think it wouldn't be sort of the primary focus. That's what I've said. And I know I've said that in many tutorials, but just to reiterate, I think primarily what you're going for is building personal relationships with TV film sync licensing libraries and putting together album after album after album, going for custom jobs, that kind of thing, becoming the inner circle member. Now, once in a while, you're going to put out a track that just gets rejected, right? And the library is just not going to be able to work with you on. They're going to go, it's too far away from what we want, or maybe they'll try to work with you for a couple revisions, but you're not getting it. So in that situation, the worst thing you can do with that track is have it sit on your hard drive and just have it collect dust and not do anything. So, obviously probably the first option I would look for is still try to improve it, take their notes if they gave you notes, still go back and try to make it as strong as it can. Maybe try to find a separate TV film library to partner with to get that into, maybe if you have the time and the resources to be able to do that. If you don't, then next would be go find a royalty-free site or something where it's very easy to just get it up online right away and at least have it out there so you could potentially earn income with it, because that's the big plague hitting our community as producers and as musicians is, music on hard drives. It's like we have gravestones, we have mass graves of these dead tracks sitting on hard drives that people aren't releasing, not giving to the world, and not even trying to potentially put themselves in a position to monetize. So if you're trying to do sync licensing full time, you have to take every possible avenue that you have at your fingertips. So it's always a great, like Mike was saying, it's a great plan C or a plan D for the stuff that just isn't quite ready for prime time. And it might not be bad, but for whatever reason, the library is just giving you a lot of pushback on it. That's okay. There could be another place for it. So anyways, before we finish out today, guys, you guys have any final thoughts about the royalty-free versus licensing libraries? Go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, I just got one, I'm speaking from like how things were in a way, like how I've seen things in the past, but I'm also curious what potentially people can do. Like I've seen some, I don't know how all of these different companies run, because I know like Artist.io is a little bit different. They do have some form of quality control or something. And then like Audio Jungle has zero quality control. Anybody can sign up. I could easily see people being a little more like entrepreneurial-ish, I guess, and using these as like springboards more than as like means to an end all be all kind of situation where, maybe you have your stuff on Audio Jungle, but you're like good on social media marketing to the point where you're actually driving traffic to back to your own tracks, or doing something along those lines where it actually does make a lot of financial sense for you at that point, because they're providing this is what people do with Spotify and iTunes, right? They put their music on there, but they don't just expect people to find it on iTunes, right? Or on Spotify. They have to do all this other work to drive people there. So I'm curious as to how many people will do that, like extra part, like almost like putting it on the site as step one. Then there's stuff afterwards. Like I'm actually really curious how that could work out for people. I know that these companies have like split issues or like how much they get as a split, but they are providing the platform. So it's kind of, we'll see how that runs, but I'm actually curious how that will go, because then you're your own salesperson, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, and that's a lot of extra work. That's not just making music.
Yeah.
That's a lot of posting, and that's a lot of sharing links, and that's a lot of encouraging and creating content and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, and I know I remember, Trevor, we were at that Sync Summit, and I remember, you told me one of the questions was like, this is like a lot of work though. Do we really have to do all of this stuff? And it's like, yeah, you kind of do. I mean, this is a new world where it's DIY, you can outsource a lot of stuff. You can obviously hire somebody to be your sales rep, but you're going to pay them, they're going to earn something from you. So no, we're living in an age where, yeah, you got to take ownership and responsibility for a lot of it. Fortunately, with TV film libraries, I haven't had to do almost any self-promotion at all, which I've been very fortunate, and maybe because I'm lazy in that way, I didn't want to do that. But I've liked the fact that I've partnered with somebody that they take care of that. Like, they do the promotion, they go do the whining and dining, so I can just focus on my music. So that's probably another reason why that fit better for me. But some of you guys, you love social media, you love posting videos, you love doing live streams of you making music. Great. Like, that might be a fit for you, that you actually feel like that's not going to be work, that's actually going to be enjoyable. So anyways, Mike, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, so for me, my biggest issue that I've always had with more royalty-free sites and stuff like that, aside from the quality, has just always been the price points. So I understand it with as a library that does lower sync fees, let's say for a TV show, but then you're making royalties or whatever. Like, you're making that money back in royalties, which is great. But if that's all being cut away, and and a company like Audio Jungle is still only charging like, hey, take a track for $25. I mean, especially if more like good composers are like signing up for it just because they don't know any better or for whatever reason, and putting some of their top level stuff on there, and it sounds good enough, to where a lot of people don't notice a difference. That just kind of brings down the value of everything else, so especially when you can start to make the argument of like, well, I can get this track for $25. Why should I pay you 10 grand for what what are you offering me? Right. So I think for me, when I look into the future of this, I think what I would be looking closely at is what side of the fence AI is going to fall into. So we're going to start, that's a big thing, right? Like, so especially for like AI is being created to help take care of these like sort of quick turnaround, almost a little bit more generic and trending sort of music that people need a lot of. Now, is it going to be priced, to where it's like, well, the tech costs this much to develop, and thus it's going to be rolled into the price. So now you're paying a premium price for this, along with it making music. Or is it going to be priced like, hey, pay us $7 a month and you get access to 100,000 tracks for use for whenever you want, and they just rely on numbers, basically like millions of subscribers, let's say, to kind of make their money. I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's kind of something that worries me, right? Because I'm much more of the person that's just like, I got one track and it's freaking $500,000. Right. Like I'm more of that train of thought than like,
Yeah.
So.
And that makes me think, and if you guys didn't catch my podcast, I did an interview with actually Shane from Amper, which is actually the AI creation music tool, a few months ago, actually. So if you guys want to go back on my timeline with the podcast, you can listen to that. Really interesting interview. Very controversial, of course, because it's scary to think of these technologies coming in to interrupt us. And right now, I think you guys have all heard it. I've heard it too. The music, it doesn't feel like a human at all, and it's still very like clanky and it's not exactly there yet, but it's obviously on its way. And I always find this going to be a fascinating thing, like where they say, will AI be able to create music that can really resonate with us and actually make us feel something? That will be something really interesting to get into, because I always think that like we have only scratched the surface probably of what music really is. I don't think we really know exactly like how far we can push music. We've seen it in this very commercialized form for our whole life, right? It's very commercialized, 2 to 3 minutes. It's got this thing. But I think when you start seeing artificial intelligence now taking over that part of our industry or whatever, and taking care of these like short little turnaround things, like you said, like a little easy music bed or whatever. Where will that push us as music producers in terms of like, will we then evolve to a different level of creating music? And I don't even know what that means. Is that like new genres? Does that mean new sounds, new ways of like having audio, like literally having audio heal people, like actually having people like listening to music in a way that actually is not just about like, oh, okay, that makes me feel something, but literally like there could be certain tones or technologies that we can input into music that can actually literally change our brain waves in ways even more than we can now. Like I always look into that stuff to say like, I think we're going to be pushing boundaries in all forms of art, not just in music, but in visual art and video and audio. We're going to be going into new and virtual reality and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to be pushing the bounds of what we think creativity is. I think we think that like, oh, we have art and music, so pretty much what else left is there? It's like, no, like it's always an evolution of like, you think like, listen to the music that you have now and then go listen to what they were listening to in 1920. You can hear that we are expanding what we see as music, right? Because stuff you'd hear today, you probably listen to it in 1920s and go like, what is that garbage? I can't even hear that, right? It's just noise to me. So we are really kind of expanding our own definition of what really music is. So I think it's a really exciting time, and it's going to be scary at the same time. But you can't have, like I said many times, you can't have opportunity without fear on the other side of it. So going to be scary, but there's definitely going to be some cool new adventures that we get into on this earth and in this industry, obviously moving forward. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys appreciated this and got something useful out of it.